Hey guys, and welcome, and thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. My guest today is a self-described successful stoner. His mission is to change the negative stigma associated with being a cannabis user, and he has invested years into product development and advocacy. He's a founder of Myster, an Octave high-end accessories brands that specialize in modern and innovative cannabis hardware. Davis Clayton Kiyo, thanks so much for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today, sir.
Thanks so much for having me. You're a legend, especially in the cannabis advocacy area. So first off, really appreciate your work there.
No, thanks so much, sir. I probably, you're pretty young, but I probably been advocating for almost 2/3 of your life. But
I remember you were very early. You were doing it when it wasn't the cool thing to do.
And way back before it was Vogue, back in the year 2000, 2001. So yeah, I went a long time where it was pretty much ostracized by lots of people who now all of a sudden have jumped on a bandwagon and act like they, have believed in it all along, but we know the truth. Your history is really very interesting. And I know that we are almost like homies because you grew up in Maryland, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland, from about the age of 12. So it's kind of where I learned my love for cannabis.
Yeah, and that's really interesting too, because you beat me by a year there. I started when I was about 13 years old, but you started actually experimenting with or using when you were 12. Tell me a little bit about that first experience.
Yeah, I was definitely early in my circle of friends, and yeah, I remember trying a bunch of times and not really getting high. I think it took me about 9 times till I actually got high. I kind of remember pretending to be high just to sort of fit in, but then when it hit me. I just remember thinking, this is it. Like, I love this. I love the way this makes me feel. It just really just kind of felt like it was defragging my mind, and really it just set me on and I also remember thinking like, oh man, I've been lied to. Like, this is not a bad thing. Like, I remember being super high and being like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, why did I believe this was a bad drug? Why did I believe this was something that was bad for me or bad for society? And it sort of just set me on this path of questioning everything. If they lie to you about that, what else do they lie about?
So, you went ahead and did your junior high and high school years. Were you a everyday user, a once a week user? What?
I was definitely an everyday user. Yeah, basically from the first day that I got high, it was pretty much every day since then. I mean, I've definitely kind of slowed down a little bit. I still am a daily user. But for most of my teens, most of my 20s, most of my 30s, I'm still 30, but in my 30s. But yeah, always a daily user. And it's just as I've gotten a little older and maybe a little bit more busy, I've slowed down a little bit, but I'm still a pretty heavy user.
And but now throughout those early years, did you ever really think that you would pursue a career in the cannabis industry? Or did you even think that there would be a career to be pursued in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I think towards the end of high school, my career was in the cannabis industry. I mean, to be straight up, I was in the traditional market. That's kind of, I had felt like cannabis was good for the world. And so I justified breaking unjust laws, and was basically like the weed guy in my high school, and kind of got deep into selling cannabis, and led to a lot of legal problems throughout my life. But I've always felt like it was part of the advocacy is just to really spread the plant. And so yeah, I didn't think I was going to have such an overt career. Like, I thought it was always going to be sort of secret. But I love where it's gone.
And early on, I mean, now did you always have a fascination with technology and delivery systems, or was it just something that you kind of grew into out of your own personal use and realized, hey, I could make something better than that?
Yeah, I've always been like a gadget hardware guy, right? Like, I just remember I used to go around the neighborhood, and there'd be like trash days where people were putting out microwaves or broken stereos, things like that. I'd always like take things and bring them back to my parents' house and go in the basement and take things apart and use certain parts for other things and fix a microwave and all this stuff. So I'd always just, like, from the very beginning, I've always been sort of obsessed with engineering and architecture and just sort of hardware altogether. And so that happened before I got into cannabis. And then, of course, based on the story I just told you, I just fell in love with cannabis and the whole industry, the whole community. And then, yeah, like after probably my 20s, I sort of just decided like, hey, these are my two passions, hardware and technology and cannabis. And I want to figure out a way to combine them. And that's basically what I did.
And what was the first thing that you kind of created on your own?
So the first idea I had is what I kind of call it, but I had this idea for the thing called the stash tray. So, I mean, I can just show it to you real quick.
Sure.
It's a all-in-one magnetic rolling tray. So you've got a container, grinder, ashtray, lighter, and everything is magnetized in place. But yeah, I had an idea for it kind of just through use, right? Like I would hang out with friends and I'd always say like, why is there not a liquor cabinet for your cannabis? Like there's all these pieces of hardware, even like coffee and tea. There's tea sets and like a really nice coffee machine. There's always been this like hardware around the ritual for alcohol and for tea, but there wasn't ever really like an organization system for cannabis. So that's really what I set out to do. And it kind of morphed into this like magnetic organization system. But the original idea was like a liquor cabinet for your cannabis.
Gotcha. And then that's what really, I guess, that's where Myster was born out of first, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So like the stash tray was the first and really is still the flagship product of the Myster brand.
Right. Did you originally think that you would end up having stores, or did you think that you would just be a vendor selling in other stores that sold paraphernalia and head shop stuff?
So yeah, I definitely did not think I would have stores. I kind of, there's other parts of my journey where I've always kind of been a serial entrepreneur. I wasn't just in the traditional market. I had an eBay consignment store and I had a shipping center. And so, as I developed the stash tray and it started to organically just kind of explode. I mean, online sales were doing really well and things were kind of going viral without, paying for marketing. I sort of realized like, whoa, I'm onto something here. And I ended up converting one of my retail locations into a head shop, or basically like a boutique to show off my products. And then, things just kind of started going really well. I opened multiple stores. I had a warehouse. I had an office. I mean, I kind of, hired a bunch of people. To be honest, I kind of bit off a little bit more than I could chew in the beginning of these companies. And it sort of led to some legal problems actually. In Maryland, I was raided in 2016. Our store was raided for selling CBD oil, which we still believe was completely legal, but it didn't really matter to the Montgomery County Police. But yeah, so where I'm going with this is I think I actually kind of made a mistake getting into these stores. It really, and through going through this legal situation, it was in some ways a blessing in disguise, because it ended up like kind of pulling us back and reducing our fixed expenses and allowing me and the company to really just focus on what we're good at, which is developing and manufacturing and selling innovative products, especially DTC, like on the website, direct to consumer.
Yeah, I mean, this is 2016, so you're right. That back then, the hemp bill had not passed, so therefore CBD was not technically legal, being a component of the hemp plant, even.
Yeah.
But you were selling something that was not high in THC, but probably had some lemon in it.
Yeah, it's a frustrating story, actually. I mean, so I don't know if you're from Maryland. You probably know of the legend of Montgomery County Police. They really, really take their job very seriously. And so, unfortunately, I feel like they just wanted us out of there because we were one of the early like overt head shops in Bethesda. And so they came in and they charged me using the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. So they kind of used like almost like a loophole where they charged us as if we were selling wax or like BHO oil, even though it was CBD oil. So it was below the 0.03 minimum, but they used this Controlled Dangerous Substance Act to kind of get around it. And they rated us and they treated us like we were selling wax. I mean, they took all of our inventory, which was hugely detrimental to the business. They raided they raided both of my shops. They raided my parents' home because that's where I was when I incorporated the business, which is just ridiculous. They came in with guns, which is stupid. They took all of our funds, like they went into the bank account, or they went into the bank and took checks for all the balances of all of our business accounts and my personal account. And yeah, they charged me with 3 felonies. It was
And
pretty
how did that
ridiculous.
end up working out in the court system? Were you found guilty
So
or?
I was facing 15 years, which is almost comical for this level of CBD. But I ended up taking a misdemeanor plea agreement because I wanted to continue with my business and I didn't want to risk going to trial. I mean, I really wanted to go to trial, but I ended up taking the misdemeanor plea agreement so I could continue with the business. And because of that, I ended up losing the civil trial. So they kept all the money, they kept all of our inventory. It was a hard time. It was a hard time.
That's crazy. And now, I mean, looking back at it, doesn't it seem insane that that happened? And now Maryland does have a medical cannabis law right now, right? So you can.
Yeah. Oh, Maryland's cannabis program is popping right now, right? They're doing really well. Money is flowing in. They've got lots of funding. So I kind of was saying that I think I was the last person in Maryland to kind of get hit with some of the outdated laws and the outdated situation. So in that way, it was positive that I was the last person. It's interesting. Like probably you saw in my bio, I also that was the 2016 was actually just the second time I ran into cannabis problems or legal problems. In 2004, when I was pretty young, I was indicted by the federal government for conspiracy to smuggle 100 pounds from Canada into Montana. And so I was facing 10 years in federal time. And we actually ended up going to trial and I beat the case. They ended up dropping the case, which I was so young, I didn't even really realize like how big of a deal that was. But if I had lost that case, I probably would have ended up doing like 8 to 9 years in jail, and my whole life would have been ruined. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I probably, would just gone to a different trajectory. And so I think kind of the moral of the story or my story is that I'm one of the really lucky ones. And it had to do with you know my family. Like we had money to help defend me. We had know-how because of my parents are lawyers. We had connections in that way. And actually my parents hate me saying that, but it's just true. That's kind of how the legal system works. And from that point on, when I got out of that case or when I beat that case, it really just it made me realize like, oh my God, like I'm crazy lucky because either the color of my skin or because of the funds around me or the connections around me. But there's hundreds of thousands of people every year that are so much less lucky than me. I mean, I'm sure you know all these numbers, right? Like 2019, over 500,000 people in the United States were arrested for cannabis, almost 90% for possession. It's
Which is really asinine when we look at the fact that over 75% of the country has some form of cannabis law that allows cannabis use, and we're still arresting people. I mean, I pulled my hair out already, but no, I mean the idea that right now in 2001, with the number of states that have come on and the number that are about to come on, that anyone would be arrested for cannabis is, especially cannabis possession, is just ridiculous. Now, do you have retail shops now?
No, we don't. So because of the 2016 conviction, we ended up closing both of our retail shops. We are in probably 600, 700 retail shops right now through our distribution partners. But the core of our business is actually still direct to consumer, really just online, selling direct to consumer. We've shipped to over 90 countries. We have a very broad international customer base, which I'm pretty proud of. And I think sort of speaks to the movement altogether that that's where we're sort of lucky in this business, is that because we're in the hardware side and not the plant touching side, we're not really limited by licenses. So our warehouse is in Los Angeles, California, but we ship all over the world. And it's really interesting to look at the data and see like certain countries that are starting to uptick. And through my travels around the world, it's pretty clear that there's just secret stoner societies in almost every country. I mean, even China, India's got a huge market. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen when the US finally wakes up and legalized. I'd imagine that the rest of the world is going to sort of, try to catch up and see what's going on here. And so I just think that this industry and this market is so huge, and people just don't realize it because it's been so criminalized that the users and the customers have to keep it secret. But I do truly believe once we legalize in the United States, that this industry is just going to explode, and it's going to be, in my opinion, bigger than tobacco and bigger than liquor.
But now I wonder though, when you think that way, and believe me, listen to me, I wish from your lips to God's ears that this happens sooner than later. But if you had to
Yeah.
crystal ball, when do you think? I mean, you got to stop and you think about the fact that, in the current administration, we have a president who's just elected who still believes that cannabis is a gateway drug and literally
Yeah.
fired everybody on his staff that ever said that they used cannabis in the past. That happened last month. And
Yeah.
we have attorney, a vice president who's an attorney general who was responsible for arresting hundreds of thousands of people while she was in her tenure there as attorney general, and didn't do anything as much as she jokes and laughs about her supposed own use. Um, she's done really nothing to see if she can stem the tide of these 500,000 arrests that just happened last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's really surprising, and of course it's disappointing and discouraging, but it's really surprising. It's because if you look at the numbers and just like the psyche of this country, it's pretty clear that most people want cannabis to be legal. And politicians, whether or not their real opinions or their real motives, they got to go by numbers. And so I'm really surprised that they haven't taken this, and said, "Hey, we're going to legalize. We're going to move forward with it." I mean, I'm sure you saw there was some comments from Kamala recently saying, "Oh, like we just don't have time to do that right now. Like we'll get to it later." And as you mentioned, they fired some of the staff. Like it's almost weird. Like and especially Biden, right? Because you know that he was the champion of the crime bill. I mean, he is literally, in my opinion, very responsible for those 500,000 people that get arrested every year. And so morally, like I feel like it's his obligation, specifically his obligation, to try and fix this. So it's really disappointing. So normally I would have said like 2 years, but I don't know. My hope is that maybe they're saving it for the end of the term, so then they can say, "Hey, we're going to legalize if you reelect us," because that would be a smart strategy in my opinion. But
Oh,
it feels like it might not happen.
I believe it's going to be the issue of the election. I really
Should be.
think that, and I'm hoping that we here at Let's Be Blunt and other activists play a big role in getting that to be the issue of the next election. Because I think that a lot of people were hoodwinked during this last electoral campaigning, where it appeared that Biden and Harris both made statements about, "Oh yes, this is something we're going to deal in the first 100 days. First 100 days are here and gone," and they haven't dealt with it.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to keep kicking this can down the road. And what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have a Republican who's going to step up and say, "I'm running for president. I'm going to change the law on cannabis, period, because I recognize the value it is to every state's bottom line." Boom.
I, I think it's our responsibility. Like the idea of waiting for politicians or the government to do it is it's taking too long, right? It's and remember when Obama was, I might be getting all these facts wrong, but he kind of got on and he said he was going to bomb Syria, or I don't even remember what it was, but there was something he was going to do. He was going to bomb some country, and basically the whole country was like, "No, you're not. Like we're not going to do that," and they ended up not doing it. And it kind of was a proof of the power of the people, even on top of like the democratic structure, that if we are loud enough and if we are aggressive enough, not violently, but aggressive enough and get heard, I do think we have the power to really force them to do it. And so I think it's important for people like you and me and really the whole community to push hard on this.
Well, it's interesting. You said something a little earlier when you were commenting. You said that it just seemed like there's so much silence right now. But that's what bothers me a little bit. I mean, though we seem to have little pockets of things that are happening every other week or so. I mean, you just found out, I think, last week that the Congress passed a bill on banking. But has got to go through the Senate. And will the Senate now pass that? Which seems stupid to me, since McConnell has been one of the biggest proponents of hemp. He's the guy who pushed the hemp farm bill, the hemp component through on the farm bill, because he realized how much Kentucky needed to have hemp. sales, you would think that the Senate would say, yes, come on, guys, this is like a no-brainer. Let's change the draconian banking laws. But there's not enough push from the ground up telling them to get busy, which is
Right.
really starting to tick me off a little bit. Though we have, I've got great guests always on Let's Be Blunt, and a lot of people are speaking out. But it just seems like the masses just are being quiet when we know that the masses are increased their consumption in the last year by, almost half.
Yep.
Consumption is up, you know?
I think, yeah, I just think that I think there's a lot. Yeah, of course, the excuses. There's a lot of stuff going on in this country right now where it's like, okay, let's maybe wait until we get past the last year and a half. But I personally feel it's just so crazy important. I mean, that number of 500,000 plus a year, like it's impossible to quantify how detrimental that is to our country, right? Like, as I mentioned, 90% of people that are possession, and you would think like, oh, it's just possession, no big deal. No, it's a huge deal. Like the normal guy that like walks to the corner store, picks up a blunt or some papers, and then get caught smoking a joint. He gets put on probation. He has fines, perpetual fines that he has to pay. If he doesn't pay it, or if he fails a drug test, he violates probation and then gets put into jail. I mean, people are still getting 30 days, 60 days in jail for violating probation from possession. And then if you think about it, like, I don't know if you agree with me, but I believe that you are really a product of your surroundings and the people that you're surrounded by. So by criminalizing this plant and then putting users into jail and surrounding them by real criminals, you are criminalizing the cannabis users. And I mean, think about it. Like you go to jail, you don't have a lot of money, you meet a bunch of people that are, real drug dealers or real criminals. Then you get out of jail, you can't get a job because you're on probation or you're on release. You can't get a loan because of your criminal record. It's just this like unquantifiable pattern that just ruins hundreds of thousands of people's lives. And as you know, it's really focused on Black and brown people of color, where it's frustrating for me to even talk about it because it's the same deal. Like I beat a case twice, like huge cases twice. And I truly believe it's because I'm white and because of my connections. And that's just not acceptable. Like it's not. And so even for me, like I feel like it's my responsibility to be loud about this, to be overt with my brands. And to be honest, like I have a plan. I don't want to really get too deep into it, but I have this plan of like how I'm going to turn the funds that I make off of my companies into actual advocacy that would work to lower that number of people that are arrested. Because everybody's trying to legalize weed, and clearly that will happen eventually. And everybody's trying to get people out of jail for cannabis, which is of course very important. But I think it's important to focus on lowering that number until cannabis is legalized. It's important to lower the number of people that are arrested every year for it.
And especially when you have states like New York now, that one of the biggest population in the country, getting ready to pass. They passed their law, and their law is going to allow for cannabis consumption anywhere you can smoke a cigarette. So
Yeah.
you can walk down the street in Manhattan and smoke a cigarette, smoke a joint, and nobody can say a thing about it unless you're smoking in front of a school. And unfortunately, in New York, there's sometimes you can't recognize, you don't recognize where a school is because there are schools in the middle of blocks and they're not that clearly identified except for maybe a little placard outside. So you got to know about where you're walking. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that they're going to end up having, social clubs in New York where you'll be able to come together and consume indoors or outdoor patios in New York. Yet, one state over and one state down, you're still getting arrested and sent to jail for doing the same thing.
No, it's great. I mean, it's great news, right? Like it's clear that we, as a country, we are making progressive steps. But it's in my opinion, just has to happen faster, right? Like and this, like cannabis has just been used as an excuse, almost like a catalyst for police to take away your rights, your money, and your freedom. Like it's oh, I smell weed, I'm coming into your car, or like, oh, we think this guy's selling weed, we're going into his house. Oh, he's got a bunch of money. Like this money is ours now because it was associated with a drug dealer. It's always, and I'm saying things that you probably already know, but maybe the listeners don't. That number of 500,000 plus people, that's more than all violent crimes combined. like if you think about it, like cannabis is used, and I think actually this is why the Biden administration is very apprehensive about just legalizing cannabis, because the foundation of our incarceration system in this country is funded by the catalyst of cannabis in that way, where you get people, catch them smoking a joint, and as I mentioned, there's this progress that turns them into a criminal and funds the incarceration system. So it's just not as simple as legalizing it, because I think all of a sudden we're not going to have as many people in jail or as many people that turn into criminals, which of course we want, but the politicians and lobbyists don't want that.
Come on, that the jail and prison system in America is a cottage industry that has been a for-profit industry now for years, and it really, like you nailed it a little earlier when you said it. It is to me, and I've talked about it on here, Let's Be Blunt, quite often, that it's nothing more than a re-enslavement tool. It's been a tool since you can't use slavery for real. There's a way to enslave people by putting them behind bars, locking them up. So you do have them as slaves to a system. And we know that 80% of those people, that 500,000 that you're talking about, are people of color. And this has been a way to perpetuate the slave hierarchy in America. And, until there are more people like yourself who are willing to step up on the plate and say, enough is enough, man. Come on. You know what I mean? If it was good enough for me, it should be good enough for everybody else. So I applaud you on that, and the fact that you're, wise enough to acknowledge that, but then wise enough to talk about that. Let's talk a little bit more about the two brands, Myster and Octave. Let's talk a little bit. It's Octane, right?
Octave. It's funny. I have a way of making brands that are hard to pronounce, but Octave, kind of like the sound.
Sure.
But yeah, so Myster was the stash tray, and really a bunch of, I call them more like timeless pieces, where they're not electronic. They're more high end materials and rolling tray and grinders and ashtrays, things like that. Octave is this new brand that we just launched early last year, which is a lot more technologically advanced. So the first product that we did here, actually, I'll just grab it.
Sure.
The first product we made for Octave is this thing, which is called the Terp Timer. And it's actually a desktop unit that senses the temperature of your glass rig. So I don't know if you know the normal process, you'll end up setting a timer and you heat up a piece of glass, like a banger, and then you wait on the timer to let the glass cool down, and then you put your material inside to hit it. This actually has a very accurate sensor that senses the temperature of that banger, and then you will go in and you set your preset temperature, and it will beep when it's time for you to take your hit. So it's like kind of simplifying the process. The 10-year warranty, it lasts for 3 months on each charge. It's like more techie stuff. And then the next product we put out was this thing called the Bat Pack, which is this right here. And this is a battery pack. Like, it will charge your phone, like portable power bank that most people carry around. It does work, but it has a secret button on the side. So you slide this little button, and it opens up to reveal a rolling tray, a wallet, a spot for your papers, your battery, anything you want to put in this little strap. But it's secretive. So I've traveled around with it without any problems, and it's sort of kind of like a mini secret safe.
Really nice.
Thanks.
That's got to be a big seller overseas, right?
What'd you say?
I think that's got to be a big seller internationally.
Yeah, it's actually we had a really big Japanese distributor that just bought a huge amount. Supposedly it's going to do really well in Japan, so we'll see with that. But yeah, Octave. Those are the two first products, and just to kind of tease what else I've been working on. To be clear, I spent most of 2019 in China with my factory partners. We have a team of over 30 people that are actually, under our company. We've given them a significant portion of equity in our company. We don't really treat them as just a factory. They're actually our employees and our partners, and really my friends. But yeah, I'm deep in the engineering part of it, and really spend time in the factory and actually develop these products as well as run the whole company. But with help from a bunch of people. I'm not like a magic man. But for the last 2 years, I've been working on a new consumption system. So I've invented a device that allows you to roast material. So first there was combustion, right? Like you would roll up or you put something into a pipe. That's been around for thousands of years. You'd see a caveman, smoking a pipe. Then, 20 years ago, there was vaporization, which is great. It's a really great consumption technology. But, I find that it's not very satisfying. I always find that I kind of go back and want to smoke after I vaporize. So I've created this product and this system of hardware that actually allows you to roast the material. And what that is it sort of operates in between combustion and vaporization. And what you get is you get the best of both worlds. You get the flavor and the efficiency of vaporization, but you get the satisfaction of smoking. So that'll be coming out later this year. The first product is called the Stogie, the STOGI, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to really cause a wave or cause a disruption in cannabis consumption.
Gotcha. That's nice. And then you got a second one coming. Is there another one after that?
So yeah, the Stogie is the first product that incorporates this roasting technology. And then from there, we have multiple products that fit into this system of consumption. So there's going to be an at-home unit that's kind of similar to like a hookah. And then there's going to be a smaller on-the-go unit. But it all centers around, and I should mention this, it centers around biodegradable chambers that have the flower inside of them. So it's basically like a pre-packed thing that you put into the unit, and then when you're done, you can just throw it away because it's biodegradable.
Got it. Nice. Yeah, that will be transformative into the industry, I think. A lot of people.
I think so. A lot of the people that I'm working with right now and like distributors, they're pretty excited about it. And yeah, it's definitely kind of feels like my life is sort of led up to this product and this whole setup. And as I mentioned, I plan on hopefully being very successful with this. And then I'm going to take that money and the power that comes from money and try to fix the cannabis arrest problems in this country.
I mean, but you do know, you recognize that the tech industry in cannabis is pretty much just a flooded marketplace these days. I mean, again, if you're in California, you can go into several head shops or places there, smoke shops, and there are, I can't even count the number of different types of delivery systems that people have tried to innovate with. But then it seems like, everybody kind of comes back to, pipe, bowl, and something to put in it, right?
No, it's definitely a daunting endeavor. I know that, right? And I just from experience with all the prototypes and from testing and from focus groups, I'm pretty confident that we're onto something that will be revolutionary. There is going to be a lot of customer education, and it's going to be hard market penetration. I get that, and I'm not delusional thinking that I'm going to all of a sudden change the way that everybody gets high. But I think that, as I mentioned before, this market is just going to be so big that even if you have a really small portion of it, it's still a lot of profit potential there.
Now, I mean, do you run into the same banking issues that a lot of people in the industry run into, even though you're not touching the cannabis itself? But I'm sure you have to get some sort of, not even maybe a production loan or investment in so that you can get product made. Have you found that difficult?
Yes. It's been a frustrating process altogether. We've had multiple bank accounts. I mean, 5 or 6 bank accounts shut down. Just basically, you get a letter, they give you a check just because they figure out what we're doing. A real problem has been payment processors. As I mentioned, we're mostly an online direct to consumer. So we've had a lot of situations where we have a merchant account that allows us to charge people's credit cards, and they just shut them down. I mean, we've gone through probably over 10 throughout the life of this business. But now we've figured out workarounds, right? But it's been a constant annoyance of handling banking, handling payments, handling marketing. That's another thing that's a little bit of a hindrance in this industry altogether, is that we can't just market like traditional companies, right? You can't pay for Google AdWords. You can't pay for Facebook ads. You have to really get attention organically. because you can't just like spend money to get people's eyes on your product. So it's been frustrating at times, but also it's sort of forced us to be creative, and it's worked out. We've gotten a good amount of organic attention, and from there, like I think our customers are really engaged and loyal, and it's working. It's working all together.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit more though about how do you get an opportunity? Not say it's not advertised, but you're really kind of trapped in the word of mouth world, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, things like this, right? Being on podcasts with you, and also just luckily some of the products, like the stash tray specifically, was pretty innovative when it came out. So it really got attention on its own. Like people would tag people in the comments, and we got on a couple of big news networks, and a lot of like Facebook groups and things like that. So it really is word of mouth. Like our and also just loyalty. I mean, a lot of times it's 20 to 30% of our sales are actually repeat customers. So, I mean, I've just noticed looking at the data, like people buy one product and then they come back and buy it again for a friend, or they buy the new products that we put out. So it's definitely been a lot of word of mouth, and we've been trying to really capitalize on that, meaning sort of promoting, telling people to tell their friends or to share on Facebook and things like that. So it's been a part of the process, and I think I'll say this, I actually think it's even an exciting part because we've been able to do fairly well being hindered by these situations. So once cannabis is legal, or the marketing situation changes, I think we're going to be positioned in a really great spot.
Gotcha. And now, if you had to, again, let's crystal ball that thought, but even when it just comes to tech innovation, I mean, even if we don't get legalization at the national level, we have legalization now in 36 states and the District of Columbia. As soon as New York goes into its full robust program, you're going to have basically a mini Amsterdam, and huge Amsterdam in the state of New York. That's going to, what is it, 20 million people live in that state. So that state alone could end up being, extremely lucrative in itself when it comes to technology and meeting the needs of some of the things that are going to open up in the state, especially when you're talking about the fact that they are, you're going to be able to consume in restaurants, you're going to be able to consume in other places. So my mind just keeps spinning on the number of different types of products that are going to be available. Are you already looking at that kind of a marketplace and thinking about what your next move will be?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the products that I mentioned that are coming, like the Stogie, I think that'll be really great for inside consumption, things like that. But yeah, that's what gets my heart racing is the excitement around the innovation that's going to come. I mean, you mentioned that it's a competitive landscape. It's definitely a very competitive landscape in the flower side, but I actually don't necessarily agree that it's competitive in the hardware side. I think that there's only really a couple of big brands, Pax, Puffco, Raw. There's only really, like, you can count them on your hand almost, of brands that are in the hardware or the accessory space, and that's because this industry is so infantile, right? Like it's still so early in this marketplace. So that's the exciting part, is once we start to really like legalize around the world, all the hardware innovation is going to happen. The big money is going to come in and be willing to invest in the R&D that's required to really innovate in the hardware side. So, I mean, of course, it's exciting for us and for my company, but I'm just excited to see what else other people do. As I said, I'm just a hardware guy. I'm into gadgets. I love when other companies and even competitors put out really cool stuff, because it just moves the whole industry forward. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what happens over the next 10 years as legalization spreads, and then the innovation around the hardware starts to catch up.
Hey, that's really good. Well, I mean, anything else you want to add? If somebody wants to find out more information about you, where do they go?
For me personally, I'm pretty big on I'm on Instagram a lot. It's Davis Clayton Kiyo, at Davis Clayton Kiyo. Our brand, it's getmyster.com. We also have vapecartridges.com and octavehightech.com. But main place to find me is on Instagram.
Excellent. Well, at some point in time, I think I may end up, my degree is in engineering from the Naval Academy.
Oh,
And
nice.
I've had a couple of proprietary devices that I've wanted to see in the marketplace that have still never gotten there. So maybe
Well,
we'll reach out to you and see if you can help me develop out a couple of these things.
no, I mean, seriously, I mean, I am your guy for that. And I'd be honored to help you with that. But as I mentioned, we have a full team. I have 4 engineers that are really accomplished. And that's what we do. I didn't really get that deep into it, but we make hardware for some of the other bigger brands that you've probably heard of. And so if you have an idea, like even if it's a drawing, I can turn it into a prototype. We can actually test it together, all that. I'd be honored to do that for you. And I do truly believe I'm the person that could help you with that.
Sure. Well, I'm definitely going to have my group reach out to you for sure, sir. I can't thank you enough, Davis, for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. You always have a home here whenever you want. So if you got something new coming down the pike, reach out to us, and I'd love to have you back. And we'll talk about it, and we'll discuss it so people understand where they need to go. One more time, give out the websites because I want to make sure people know where to go to get you.
Sure. Getmyster.com, which is GETMYSTER.com, and then vapecartridges.com. Now, the vapecartridges.com is a little easier to remember.
Sure, got you, my friend. Well, look, you stay well, you stay safe, keep plugging away, and again, from an advocacy standpoint, thank you for what you're doing. We need to have more voices like yours ready to step up to the plate and take a stand.
Appreciate that. I really, really appreciate you having me. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, sir. Good. You take care. Make sure you tune in to the next Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.